So, like we spoke about different times, and we had this, I think, was last week's shiur, that there are two aspects and two levels concerning Yosef and Mitzrayim. One level is that the choshech, the darkness, doesn't affect him. And another level is, even more so, that he transforms the darkness. And that was, we said that was something even higher than Yaakov could even recognize, and that was hinted in what was going on, both what Yosef told his brothers, and both what Yosef told Yaakov. And that's why, remember, we said the Aliyah was split. Just in the middle of the conversation between the Shvatim and Yaakov, in the middle of the conversation between Yosef and the Shvatim, it was cut in the middle, which didn't make any sense. But then when we saw the two different topics, it made sense. In a similar vein, this is a classic concept that the Rebbe connects with Menashe and Efraim. So the beginning of the Sichos is going to be quite straightforward. Menashe is going to be that first thing, maintaining, holding on to everything in spite of being the darkness of Mitzrayim. Efraim being transforming. Hifrani be'eretz avi. He made me fruitful. He made me grow. That Hifrani be'eretz ani. I'm sorry, not be'eretz avi. Be'eretz ani, in my place of my affliction and suffering, he made me be fruitful. He made me be successful. But then the Rebbe is going to take it on a much deeper level, different ways how we could deal with darkness. And the Rebbe is going to explain that there is Yaakov Avinu's level, there's Yosef's level, and then there's Yosef's children's level, Efraim and Menashe. But let's see. I'm giving you a little bit of heads up of where we're going to go. Efraim and Menashe lefnei Yaakov kedei sheyivorchem. Some Yaakov is Yoda Iman is al Rosh Efraim, Ves Yoda Small is al Rosh Menashe. And Yosef had a problem with that. Kasheroz is Yosef, Vayera be'ein of Gomer, Vayomer Yosef al Avi, V'loi kein Avi, Ki zeh Menashe abchoir, Sim yemincha al Roshoi. Val kachon Yaakov, Yadaiti b'ni Yadaiti, I take a note that he is the b'choir, Gam hu, and he's taki going to be big, V'ulam achiv akotten yigdal amenu Gomer, Vayosem es Efraim lefnei Menashe. So we see that everything was calculated over here. So the Rebbe is going to explore both. What was Yosef thinking? To correct his father, there must have been also something going on in Yosef's mind. Yosef didn't think that his father didn't know what was going on. And Yaakov still insisted. So the Rebbe is going to bring this over that Yaakov, according to his level, that was the B'chor, Ephraim, and Yosef, according to his level, Menashe had to be the B'chor. V'tzarech lahav na yisoid lo zeh sh'ab'chor makabel bracha g'dol m'shar echov u'lefish l'b'chor yeshna mayla v'chshivas al pnei shar ha'achim. V'im kein kivan she'Efraim hu gadol b'mayla b'Menashe achiv ha'koten yigdol menu madu ha'nikvam al mayla she'Menashe yeh b'chor l'gab Ephraim. That itself is a question. If Yaakov felt that it was so important to give Menashe the firstborn, give Ephraim the bracha as if he would have been the firstborn, he gave him a stronger bracha. So if so why did Hashem make it that way, that he should be born second? He should have been born first. Asher boy Ephraim naila Menashe, v'lechein vayosem es Ephraim lefnei Menashe. So each one has their own unique aspect, that because of that, each one is considered in his own way special and greater. Menashe is the actual B'chor because of something that he has that Ephraim doesn't have, and Ephraim has something that Menashe doesn't have. Oidim b'zeh, k'vich nisbar pam rabbis, Eitzel tzadikim, ubefrat eitzel ha'avis v'ashvatim, ein malkim l'toyz chas v'sholem. Ubefrat b'inyaneim aksuvim b'toyres emes. Shein bevada inyanim amitiyim v'nitzchiyim, because the point of Torah is to teach us a lesson. And it's supposed to be ha'irah, and it's ha'irah nitzchis, and the Torah is nitzchis, so therefore, obviously it's teaching us a correct procedure, a correct thing that took place. V'kivim sha'atoyrim meloshen ha'irah, ha'reizu gam ha'irah nitzchis chol echad miYisrael b'chol ha'doyres. When Yosef complained, it also was loy hoysem neshatach has v'sholem v'lo yada she'achiv hakot nigdol menu. Not only about Yaakov didn't make a mistake, but Yosef correcting Yaakov was also not a mistake. El mepnei shesavar shemaylos Menashe shemetzida zabchor kanal sifalf geveres amaylos Efraim. So in other words, like we said before, both were right. Ephraim has a certain advantage, Menashe has a certain quality, a certain milah, and Yosef believed that the quality of Menashe overruled even that great quality that he knew Ephraim had. V'hainu shebeis hanyon hein masha savar Yosef shemalos Menashe gedol Yosef v'hein shetasa shel Yaakov she'Ephraim nal Yosef amitim heim. Both views are true. Mitzad inyonoi v'avidose shel Yosef Menashe nal Yosef. And mitzad inyonoi v'avidose shel Yaakov Ephraim hu nal Yosef. So he says a very interesting thing, that in the bracha of Yaakov to Yosef, it seems to indicate that Menashe, hu yivorach hasana'arim, it seemed to indicate that he gave a preference in that bracha to Menashe over Ephraim. Why? Because he was talking to Yosef. That's what the Rebbe says in footnote 6. He was talking to Yosef, so he was aiming according to Yosef's perspective. He says, so that's Yosef's children. What was born to Yosef? Menashe. The Arizal says that the reason why the Bechor takes twice as much is because Pi Shnayim Beruchai. The Bechor gets twice as much from his father's nefesh, from his father's ruach, from his father's neshama. He's invested, and that's why, because the father's neshama is more invested in the b'chayr, so that's why he's also entitled to twice as much, because the children, the Rebbe always brings down that hayoyrish oimid b'makom hamoyrish, someone that inherits, he takes the place of the one. He's not just receiving, it's not like getting a matana. He's actually standing in the place of the one that gave him the Yerusha. So therefore, the firstborn has more of the father in him. That was the relationship to Yosef, their father. But the relationship to Yaakov, Shnei Banecha Gomer, what did Yaakov say? Li Hein. And what did he go on? Ubeseder, he went in the following order. Efraim and Menashe, Kireuven v'Shimon Yeli. Reuven was the firstborn. But he said Efraim and Menashe, it's like Reuven and Shimon. Efraim l'fnei Menashe, v'arehu Kireuven b'chor Yaakov. V'achiluk ben Menashe l'Efraim v'abir v'zeh. She'ilu shal Menashe shayach l'Yosef. V'shal Efraim l'birchas Yaakov. Yuvan min achiluk b'shmeiseim. Shnei Hashemes, Menashe. Why was he called Menashe? Al Shem ki nashani elikim es kol amoli v'es kol beis avi. The Rebbe is soon going to explain what it means. Nashani means he made me jump. He made me far away. He made me like forget. V'Ephraim al Shem ki hifrani elikim beretz ani. Increase, multiply, fruitful. Mevatim es rikshei halev she'oirera hayirida b'Mitzrayim etzel Yosef. Two feelings, two experiences that he had. El shebeshnei ktzavis havchim. Two different extremes. Hashem Menashe maskil Yosef ki nashani gomer beis avi. Hainu shu nimtza b'makim shemarchik mashkiach bebeis avi. Literally, nashani is like by Gid HaNoshe, that it says that the Gid HaNoshe was moved from its place. Noisha means that it's moved away. So Yosef HaTzadik was moved away from his place. He was moved away in such a way to make him forget totally on his father's house. And despite being in such a place, he held on. So that's Menashe. Menashe is, like we said before, maintaining the connection with Yaakov. Mash'enkin Ephraim, Efrani Elokim Beretz Oni, in Yonoi, Shevach v'Haidah ala Ilui v'Yisrael, Efrani she'neskayim b'im Mitzrayim. Ubeis in Yonim Eluk Shudim, Lebeis ha'Efanim v'Avodas b'nei Yisrael Beretz Oni b'Golus. Throughout Golus, we always have these two approaches these two relationships with Golus. Oifen echad hu ha'adam amel misyageya shlo elias mushba mitzivasei. Aidezeh shenechaz bekesher and beis avi hamatzav shahoya by koydem hayirida begolus. Hu masker latzim bechol eis shu nimtza v'matzav shemenashe umashkiachas beis avi. He's constantly aware of the fact that there are things that are trying to tear him away from his father's home. He's constantly on guard, he's constantly careful, he's constantly bearing this in mind. And that itself is a poil shlo yishkach. Eifen sheni hu nimtza v'avidasi besoich eretz ani b'choshech hagolus v'af ba'eifen shazikaron de beis avi eine kaim b'toikav kol kach etzloi. It could be that he doesn't really remember his father's house that much. V'sham misyageyahu, not in maintaining, but in transforming. Lahoyres choshech hagolus b'oira kedusha. V'aidezeh, when he does that, it's not just a gain that the Golus now gains, but also it's a gain v'aidezeh nase ilui v'yisren gamba adam ha'ovid ad asher hifrani elikim beretz avi. It's not just that he made successful for Mitzrayim, now they had food or whatever, and he was mashpia on them, like we spoke last time, Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach, and he made them have a bris milah, but he himself, Yosef, reached a greater dargah because he was transforming. And again, this is the Nikudah of the Rebbe the whole time. It's not just about holding back and the whole time fighting the outside and preventing the outside from coming in. It's about going into the outside and transforming the outside. Dalet zeu atam lakach she'Efraim yigdal mimenu mimenashe lefi shetachlis ha'ilu shel hayirid l'Mitzrayim v'shel hagolus bechlal hiyirida tzoyrech aliyah l'maylo yoser mekoydem hayirida lo rak heder hashich de beis avi ela beikar ha'peula begolus she'yitfasef yisrain aidei hayirida hifrani elikim be'eretz ani. Like we've spoken about different times. If you don't have a Yerida L'Tzoyrech Aliyah, so what have you gained? You don't invest $100 to get $100 back. You invest $100 to get $1,000 back, $500 back, even $101 back. But you don't invest it to get the same amount back. So if Yidden go into Golus, and all they are is the same place where they were before, they just maintained their distance from Golus and they didn't accomplish anything, so what's the purpose? The purpose is Yeridot Tzorech Aliyah, to get to a higher place than they were before they went to Golus. That's what Ephraim stands for, getting to that higher level. Idach, on the other hand, Menashe v'abechoir, lefisha beleida v'his galus, dahainu ba'avoida begolu bepoil, Menashe koidem le'Ephraim, koidem sheyuchol ha'adam lifel be'eretz ani, sheyavil dehifrani elikim, which is asay toiv. If you're dividing it into two terms of sur maran, asay toiv, so then this is what additional good can he accomplish? Muchrachu lizoir ulishamer lebal yushpa mechoshech hagolus sur mara al yidei zichron tmidish of a kesher and beis avi. So in the order of things, what do I do first? Before I can challenge the Golus, before I can transform the Golus, first I got to protect myself from the Golus. So in birth, which is about revelation, in the order of what we do, first we do Menashe. But that's not the goal. That's not the ultimate. The higher level is Ephraim. What does a bracha indicate? That's what a bracha is. Avur avodas hagolus. Over there, Ephraim choshev yoser, vayosem es Ephraim lefnei Menashe. The Rebbe a lot of times brings down that this is the idea also, a bracha is about bringing down something from its root. Bracha is from the word brecha, where everything is collected, a pool. And by tefillah it says you are creating something new. Yi ratzon l'fanecha. You're starting a new ratzon. By bracha, you're drawing down something that's already there in the source. So Yaakov Avinu is trying to bring down from the source the level that Ephraim represents, that higher level. So that's the ultimate purpose. That's the source. That's the reason for the Golus. Not the order of how things are going on in Golus, but its higher source. Hasbaras inyan ba'omek Yosef. Ve'ilui va'yisron hanifel ba'adam Yisrael. Ay de'avoida b'choshech ha-Golus. Kama inyan. Now the Rebbe is going to focus more inward on the person. Up till now we're talking about what is my relationship to outside. How does this now affect me? Aleph, one way is Hayirida Moireres as Toikef Haneshama Shaloi Lispol Mechoshech HaGolus. Ukeshem Shedavke Kasher Yeshne Menagid Hadover Moireres Midas Hanetzochen, which something, it's a type of midah that doesn't come out, the midas Hanetzochen, unless you have an opponent. If you have no one fighting you, this great midah, this powerful midah of Netzach doesn't come out. Valderech Mashanemar Tzomelachon Nafshi Goimer Lihiyoise Be'eretzia. Because he's in a dry land. The Baal Shem Tov said that halavai, we wish that we would have that same commitment, that same yearning, that same desire to connect to the Eibishter when we're in a comfortable place, as in the time of Golus. The Rebbe a lot of times used to speak about the Yidden that came from Russia, that we don't see on them their Mesiras Nefesh. These are people that had such Mesiras Nefesh for Yiddishkeit when they were in Russia, and never they came to America, and we don't see that on them anymore. There was some from time to time, like, bemoan the fact that we don't see that. Because this midah of Nitzachin is something that usually doesn't come out unless you have a challenge. And this is what he's saying, that halavai asher b'kodesh chazisicha, halavai, that even when I'm in a holy place, I'm not in an Eretzia, I'm not in a place that's a dry land, I should also have that powerful connection. So that is one effect that Golus has on the person, which is still about maintaining. But I'm bringing out the strength of my Menashe. Beis, ba'omek Yosef, aidei yirida gedoyla, misgala u'misoider toikef haneshama, she'ein by kol hagbolos. U'mitzad ze yesh bekoichoi, loy rak li'yishoyer b'shleimus, like we said before, maintaining, ba'ofen sha'agolos loy tifol by kol yirida, ela adra b'lifol al svivosoi, l'roimema the environment, l'dargosoi hu, ad la'afichas choshech hagolos lo'er. These are still not the ultimate. The way we're always talking about is either maintaining, either holding the Golus back, or transforming Golus. Comes the Rebbe, says there's a further level. Aval beis in yonim elu hemrak ilui v'yisroin haynosofim b'neshama mitzad atzma ve'ein zeis elo she'ilui zeh sheyeshne b'neshama mizgala dafka ide avoida b'Golus. This is something that a Yid has because that's his makeup of his neshama. But to reach into that depth of the neshama, to reach into the deep part of the neshama, doesn't happen unless you have those challenges. So these two things, either the strength to be able to stand fast in the darkness, or the strength to even more so be able to turn the darkness around to light, is still things that come from the neshama itself. But until you have the darkness, it doesn't become revealed. Here we're going to talk about something that doesn't happen from the neshama, but something as if from the outside that the neshama gains. Bedugmas habal tshuva shebiyodei gam zochis shenasim mizdoinus mashenkin tzadik. The Baal Tshuva that we say, that because he did tshuva out of a great love, because of that, even his avedas turn into mitzvahs. So this is not something that shows the great power of the neshama of the Baal Tshuva. Sure, the fact that someone that was so far away decided to become Baal Tshuva, where did it come from? Obviously, it comes from some very deep place in the neshama. But then, taking the Avedas, which have no connection with the realm of Kedusha, have no connection with his Neshama, and now you're transforming it into Kedusha, this adds to the Neshama of the Baal Tshuva, something that his own Neshama never had. So that's a third level, a higher level than the previous two levels. Hein Efraim ve'hein Menashe areim bonim liYosef hamivatim es inyona Yosef al shem Yosef Hashem li bein nacher. Again, like we spoke about before, the difference between, in the previous week, the difference in Yosef and Yaakov, and definitely the difference between Yosef and all the Shvatim. But what was Yosef really about? The ultimate level of Yosef was Yosef Hashem li bein acher, that he takes the acher and turns it into ben. Transformation. Both of his children were about transformation. The Hainu ha'yisofish in the fellows I avoid the Golus, lasis me acher, acher indicating sitter acher, turning him into ben. But this itself, al shebezeg gufa, yesh beis darkness. There's two ways how we can gain when we transform the darkness to light, when we transform the acher into ben. Menashe toikiv azikaron the beis avi canal shows on the toikiv haneshamish in his galei till Yosef aide avodosim b'Mitzrayim. That's how powerful Yosef's neshama was. Efraim moira al yisra na'or hanimshach min ha'choshech atzmai, that's now being added to Yosef, that comes from the darkness. Ifran elikim davke, where be'eretz ani, not Ifrani. The emphasis the whole time, previously he also emphasized this, eretz ani, in a place of suffering, that's where it's Ifrani. V'kivan she'ilu ha'gavoy b'Yosef hu yisrein zeh hanimshach min ha'choshech atzmai lefichach Efraim Nailam and Menashe, because here you have the addition and the increase that comes from the darkness. Al shelofizeh kosher Yosef lahavin es ha'shayches the Menashe leYosef u'de Efraim leYaakov. Based on this, who should have more of a connection to Yaakov and who should have more of a connection to Yosef? Especially if you remember from what we learned last week, Yaakov was more out of this world, at least in comparison to Yosef, and Yosef was more part of the world of Mitzrayim and transforming. So what are we saying over here? Ephraim is about transforming. Menashe is more about the strength and the neshama of holding on fast. So that it would make more sense that Yaakov, who's more out of Mitzrayim, he should be the one that should want Menashe to be the firstborn. And Yosef, whose idea is Yosef Avayli Bein Nacher, who was a Shalit in Mitzrayim, who did all the things in Mitzrayim, he should be the one that should prefer Ephraim, not the other way around. So he says, Menashe abala haskir is base avi kanal tzrich li is la Yosef shayches la Yaakov ve'Ephraim Ifran elikim beretz ani tzarich li shaych li Yosef la haysafa habai da avoided Yosef avayli ben acher. So the increase, the Ephraim, the Yosef, should be more connected with Ephraim. So he says v'yuven ze behegdem habir bepasik va'ata shnei banecha hanoildim lecha be'eretz Mitzrayim ad boi elecha Mitzrayima li heim Ephraim and Menashe kiruvin v'shimen yili. Just looking at this pasuk, it's just so wordy, so many words. We don't know they were born in Mitzrayim. He's telling Yosef, your two sons that were born in Mitzrayim before I came. Everybody knows. Everybody over there knew he didn't. That's when they were born, and it was before Yaakov came. What's this whole arichis and telling us before I came to Mitzrayim, those that were born? What's he talking about? Not before I came to Mitzrayim, not that those that were born in Mitzrayim. All that is a known thing. Which is a simple shot. Yaakov was trying to tell him that if any children would be born afterwards to Yosef, they are not going to be considered one of the 12 Shvatim. They will either be included in Ephraim's Shevet, or they will either be included in Menashe's Shevet. But to say that they will be included as a separate Shvatim, that all of a sudden will have Ephraim and Menashe and some other kids of Yosef, no. That's the simple meaning of the pasuk. Only those two that were born in Mitzrayim before I came. But again, you don't have to go through that whole arichis also. You could just say, only Efraim and Menashe are going to be to me like the Shvatim. So that automatically excludes anybody else that's born later. There's no reason to go into that further. He says, Elazeo gam tam v'hasbara madua shayachim hem leYaakov lihei. Why should Efraim and Menashe be considered like one of the Shvatim? What? If you think about it, we learn this every single year, and we read this in the Torah every single year, but it's a really strange thing. All of a sudden, there used to be 12 Shvatim, right? 12 Shvatim were the 12 children of Yaakov. All of a sudden, something got turned around. Let's move Levi out of the picture. He's going to be a separate thing. Then afterwards, we're going to go ahead, take Yosef's children, put them into the number. Yosef's children are grandchildren. Where did they all of a sudden come into the picture to all of a sudden have this great quality to be included in the 12 Shvatim? He says, Mitzad zeh shenoldu liYosef be'eretz Mitzrayim, and specifically when were they born in Eretz Mitzrayim? They were born before Yaakov came, therefore they are deserving al kain lihem. So it's an explanation why should Efraim and Menashe be included in the Shvatim. What makes them different than any other children born, let's say, to Reuven, or any other children that would be born to Yosef after Efraim and Menashe? Because these were two born in Mitzrayim before Yaakov came over there. The Pashtus, בזה שלמרויס לא ידוסם במצרים, וגידולם בסביבה שבו יעקב לא נמצא, מכל מקום יסנהגו לקרוי לנכתב של יעקב אבינו, הרי לי hey. With that, they earned a special place amongst the Shvatim. בכך בא לידי ביטוי השלמות האמיתית ליעקב. All the Shvatim are, the literal meaning of Shevet is like a branch, something that's coming out of a tree. Efraim and Menashe showed, by the way they acted, by how they grew up, by the way they were raised, that they were branches from Yaakov's tree. They were an extension of Yaakov. They continued Yaakov's message in some way even greater than the rest of the Shvatim, excepting Yosef. Al pi zeh, yuvan gam adua bin zeh, higdim Yaakov Efraim leMenashe kanal sif beis. Mi'acher sheMenashe moed al kach. Shazikkarim v'shayches l'beis avi loy nifsaku. Kanal Baruch like we spoke about at length. Menashe shows maintenance. We kept the connection. We didn't stop our connection to Yaakov. Nimtza shemitzad oifen avoida zeh ein kan matziv amiti da'ad boya lechem Mitzrayim. Why? Because, okay, he somehow managed to hold on. He somehow was still connected. You're not going on your own power. It's not Mitzrayim that's contributing to your connection. It's because you managed to do so despite Mitzrayim, even though there was Mitzrayim. Kiven sheyesh le'kol ha'es hazikaron shel beis avi. Amitis hamatzav da'ad bo yelech Mitzrayim hi ba'oifen ha'avoida da'Efraim ha'moira al imotzi be'eretz ani in my place of affliction. Ba'oifen sha'akesher im Yaakov beis avi ein nir b'chitzonius. If you remember, the Rebbe Ray said this earlier, like in he didn't make a big point of it, but he says, by Ephraim, it wasn't necessarily so much the idea that he didn't forget his father's house. By Menashe, that was like the big thing. That's the big message of Menashe. Ephraim was just, whatever's going on, I'm going to turn the darkness into light. Va'afal pikein. Then he adds parenthetically, it's b'chitzonius. But Panemius, he obviously had that connection. Va'afal pikein. Hareu oivel avidasi ba'oifel shenikar b'oishun nechter shel Yaakov Avinu. Therefore, that's the most Yaakov that he can even hold on, even though his connection, his memory is not that strong. It's like, I can verbring a little bit about this, that the Chassidim that were born after Tavshin and Dalet, they grew up after Tavshin and Dalet, or people that became Baal Shuvas after Tavshin and Dalet, after the Rebbe's, whatever you want to call it. Bechitzonius, exactly. Because this is the parsha of Ma'azari B'chaim, Afu B'chaim. So, and there, you can't really say, yes, there's videos and there's all these different types of things, but you can't really say there's that memory of the Rebbe they're holding on to. Us old fogies are holding on to the memory of the Rebbe. We remember when we went by Kosher Bra, when we were chiddush, when we danced with the Rebbe by Sichos. The young generation, they don't have that experience. And young doesn't have to be young in years. It could be, again, people that just became Baal Teshuvos or whatever. They don't have that experience. They have the Efraim experience. They have the greater experience. And now he's going to explain how this is so much more connected with Yaakov. Mevor b'chsidus ha'istes shemidas shel Yaakov imidas ha'emes hamavriach min ha'kotza la'kotza. Emes, it says titen emes liYaakov. Truth goes through from the highest level to the lowest level. Truth applies everywhere, no matter what. If something was true, not real, but truth, let's say a statement like 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 = 2 is a true statement. You're not going to say that 1 + 1 = 2 only now. 100 years ago, it's not true. Or 100 years from now, it's not going to be true. Or on Mars, it's not going to be true. It's not that way. If a true statement, again, not real, but true, emes is in all times and in all places. ומן הקוצה הכי עליון עד לקוצה הכי תחת. ועניין זה מסקיים בפועל על ידי יוסף. It's a lot of times brought down in Chassidus, some of the footnotes that the Rebbe says over here. Eila toldus Yaakov Yosef. What do you mean, Eila toldus Yaakov Yosef? Yaakov had 12 children. I mean, we're not going to talk even about the girls. So he had 12 children. What's the Eila toldus Yaakov Yosef? Because Yosef is the one that proves, and in Chassidus language, ma'amis, and verifies and validates what Yaakov is about. Kiven shemadreges Yaakov mitzad atzmi hi atzilus l'mayla me'olmes bri yitzirasiya v'Yosef mamshachas madreges Yaakov atzilus l'mata me'olmes biam ad lo'olam haza tachten k'tzeh hi tachten. Yaakov Avinu was truth, but his level was located in the world of Atzilus. The world of Atzilus is totally removed from this world. It has nothing to do with Mitzrayim. It's total godliness. Who was the one that carried down Yaakov's truth into the world? That was Yosef. Yosef lived in Biyah. Of course, Yaakov physically lived in this world, but he was an Neshama Atzilus, which means even while being here in this world, his experience was an experience of Atzilus. Yosef carried down that message of Yaakov even in Biyah. V'zeu atama primil kach, sheyiridas Yaakov l'Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim v'gvulim olmas Biyah b'yedei Yosef. Who brought Yaakov into Mitzrayim? What was the means through which Yaakov came into Mitzrayim? Yosef was the one that carried him down. V'cheinu b'negel l'chtzei elyon. To reach the highest level, that's only through transforming the lowest. Where's their darkness? In the world of Atzilus, there's no darkness. The oilam is biyam lenahoira, to light, which is what Yosef is about. Yosef Hashem li bein acher nasa yisron ha'oir min ha'choshech l'mayla min Atzilus madreges Yaakov mitzad atzmai. The Chassidus explains that this hapcha chashoicha lenahoira, I mean, going back to the Maimer of the Rebbe Basel Lagani, the Friedrich Rebbe Basel Lagani, Kadiskafia Sitrachere, Istaliki Kara, the Kutchabrichu B'Kol Almin, the level that's B'Kol Almin, B'Shavas, Soiv Kol Almin, beyond that still is the level of Keser, the level of Oir and Saf. How does that come down? When you transform the darkness. Kadiskafia Sitrachere. So, to be able to reach a level that's even higher than Yaakov, which he is the level of Atzilus, it's only through dealing with the darkness. ובזה מבואר גם הטעם שיוד זין השונה שיעקב במצרים הישנויסה והכי טויבס. There are so many mamorim and sichos on this topic. How and why were the 17 years that Yaakov Avinu spent in Mitzrayim the best years? Vayechi Yaakov b'Eretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. And it's an obvious question. Why does he even have to tell us how many years he lived in Mitzrayim? You could calculate it yourself. It says he was 130 when he came to Mitzrayim. It says he passed away when he was 147. And what purpose is this information for? Because it's coming to teach us about how his life was. Gelebt, abgelebt. These were years that he really lived. Ki dafka ida yirida l'Mitzrayim higia al shleimusay. Both directions. Yaakov himself was like in the middle. He was not zealous. Yosef carried Yaakov down to Mitzrayim, to deal with the darkness. And because of that, he was able to reach a level that's higher than Atzilus. So Yaakov, whose truth should be expressed in joining the highest most levels with the lowest most levels, experienced his true life, of his truth, of what his real life is about in Mitzrayim. Because that's when he joined those two extremes. Good. Efraim and Menashe memalmes mekoim shel Yosef b'minyan hashvatim muvan she'inyanam hu me'ein the toldos Yaakov Yosef. They were also part of that process of being the offspring of Yaakov, carrying Yaakov down, just like Yosef did. Hainam shachas in Yana Yaakov lamata ba'aretz Mitzrayim. Ubezeh yesh b'mayil gabi Yosef. What Menashe and Efraim contributed to all of this, they added something more than Yosef even. Eitzel Yosef gam k'fishu yard l'Mitzrayim oil mezbiyah me'ira madreges Yaakov atzilus begilui. Because again, like we said before, he saw the Rebbe. He verbrenged by the Rebbe. He learned by the Rebbe. He danced by the Rebbe. He got dollars from the Rebbe. Yosef was just reliving his past. He was connected to Yaakov. So, and that's what's shown by him, and that's what he lived with. The kivim shabbat v'dasa me'ira begilui ashpa de Yaakov shalom ma'ila Mitzrayim b'yakanal, because that's what Yaakov is about. So Yosef was feeling Yaakov's experience as well. He was doing even more. Which was the big chiddush that even Yaakov didn't even recognize, like we spoke about last week. Which is he didn't really experience the darkness. He was never in a dark place. He was connected to Yaakov. So wherever he was in a place of light. So really experiencing darkness, he didn't get yet. We actually see that Yosef's life ensured that there was no darkness. The way the Yidden lived in Yosef's days in Mitzrayim, they experienced the same comfort as if they had never went into Mitzrayim. They were never in a place of affliction. They were never in a place of constraints. Mitzarim Megvulim. That's why it says at the beginning of Parsha Shmois that Elish Shmois b'nei Yisrael haboy Mitzrayim. Hold it 1 second. What are you talking about? Elish Shmois b'nei Yisrael haboy Mitzrayim. The beginning of Parsha Shmois. That was a long time ago. That was before the Shvatim came to Mitzrayim. What's he talking about? El Shmois b'nei Yisrael by Mitzrayim. So he's saying, you know what? This is continuation of what it says that Yosef passed away at the end of our parsha, at the end of our chumash. And when Yosef passed away, now it was as if they really came down. Before Eretz Yisrael and Mitzrayim, they were all in the same place. Now they felt that they lost. Now they felt they were in the darkness.
Is it because Yosef created an Israel environment in Egypt for them?
I would say that. Yes, perhaps that makes sense. Because, at least according to what the Sichos is saying over here, Yosef kept that light of Yaakov going. Not people that saw the Rebbe, but they grew up without it. So now they can keep that message going even in the darkness. Havoida b'makim shemadreges Yaakov eina niras boy. Ba'achoyshach de Mitzrayim hamaylim u'master u'menaged l'kedusha. They do feel that darkness because they grew up in a Mitzrayim that did not have Yaakov's presence over there. Nif'eles hashlemes de Yaakov shemavriach min hakotzach yelin al hakotzach hitachten, because that's where you have it so low. You didn't have it so low when Yaakov came. You didn't have it so low also in Yosef's experience. So the Rebbe goes on, Gimel Eifanim Hanal, Alf, Yaakov, Shematzad Atzmei Hu L'maylo Mitzrayim. That's one level. Beis, Yosef, Hameiris Mitzrayim, Mikoyach Hashpoas Yaakov. He's still a continuation. He's still going on the line of Yaakov. Gimel, B'nei Yosef HaYordim Al HaChoshech de Mitzrayim, Kefishu mitzad atzmai, not the way it's illuminated through Yaakov and Yosef. Mas'imim b'chlolos l'gimel anyanim anal sifhei by Yisrain habai da yirida b'golus. We said earlier about what happens to a person when he goes into a state of darkness. One, it becomes revealed a strength of the neshama that the person may not have seen before. He didn't know necessarily that he has the strength to be able to stand in the face of darkness. A higher level is that it has to bring out a really deep strength to be able to deal with transforming the darkness. And then there's something even greater, that when the darkness becomes transformed and it adds to the neshama, something the neshama doesn't even have on its own, not even in its depth. So those are the three things we said before. These three things is going to connect now to Yaakov, Yosef, and his children. Being in Arishim Shemitzat Toik Vaneshama Shalom Maila, Ein HaGolus Yichol Lifol Yerida Baneshama, but there's no Ishapcha yet. Aval Ein Ishapcha B'Chosh HaGolus Gufa, just holding it off. Nimtza Shaneshama Nisheres Kiviyachol B'Havdola L'Maila Min HaGolus. B'Dugmas Yankiv Shemitzat Atzmai L'Maila Ma'Yeridim Mitzrayim. If a person reveals that full strength of the neshama, that the darkness doesn't challenge him, so he's not really engaging with the darkness. He's just so powerful, he doesn't see what's going on around him. He doesn't realize of all the issues that even challenge him around him. That the neshama is so powerful, it touches a depth of his neshama that nothing can stand in its way. That's what he has to evoke, that's what he has to awaken. Hamamshichas madregos shel Yaakov lemata b'Mitzrayim, kach shayisapcha chashoichel en hoira nif'eles mitzad gilu ya'atzilus Yaakov b'biyam Mitzrayim. He's carrying down Yaakov's light into the darkness. V'yisra na'oir ha'nimshach min ha'choshech gufa nifal be'iker aidei ha'avoida ba'choshech de Mitzrayim b'mokim she'ein niris bo hashpos Yaakov b'necha ha'noildim l'chaberetz Mitzrayim ad bo yelecha. Because they were born before, that showed the true truth of Yaakov, the real truth of Yaakov, and that's why they were deserving of being counted as part of the Shvatim. Not any of the other Shvatim's children, and not any other children that were born after Yaakov came into Mitzrayim. Al Pikal now Tuvan Ashaychs the Menashe li Yosef Shemitzida Areu B'Chor Yosef Ud Efraim li Yaakov. We asked before that seemingly Ephraim should have more connection with Yosef Hashem li Ben Acher, and Menashe, the maintenance, the connection, that he doesn't lose the connection, seems to be Yaakov. Yaakov is about revelation. So now it's going to be understood why it's the other way around. Why Ephraim has a connection with Yaakov and Menashe has a strong connection with Yosef. Mi'acher shinyonish shel Menashe hu legalos as a zichra in the base avi vayidei zeh hu areu mechapachas choysher de Mitzrayim hareize bedugmas avodas Yosef. What was Yosef doing? Yosef was still connected to Yaakov. Yosef was bringing Yaakov down into Mitzrayim. That's the same idea like Menashe. Menashe is not releasing that connection. Hamamshicha begiluis in Yone Yaakov lamata bebya vaydeze nefelas haisapcha. Havel hashlemis to Yaakov he dafke be Yisron ha'oir min ha'choshech atzmoi hanifalai de Ephraim Efrani alekim be'eretz anye. That is when you see the true power of Yaakov. How does it affect the emes of Yaakov is even that the darkness becomes turned over. Then the Rebbe brings out the hero, like always, for us. Bnei Yisrael, Nikra al Shem Yosef. It says the pasuk in Tehillim, Noyhe Katzoin Yosef. He leads like sheep Yosef. So the whole Klal Yisrael is called Yosef. We spoke actually in the Sichos last week. We also spoke about why the whole Klal Yisrael is called Yosef. The Chazal say because he fed them, that's why he sustained Bnei Yisrael. Whoever was Bnei Yisrael at that time, Yosef sustained them. Because of that, they're called Yosef. And we explained over there, is that enough of a reason to call them Yosef? But whatever it is, we see that Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael are called Yosef. Moving from this understood, since we are called Yosef, Yosef had both levels. Menashe and Efraim. Hein de Menashe, hein de Efraim. L'choil l'roish tzrich aliyas yifasei v'tshukasei liyas bebeis avi. Liyois b'matzav shalamayla migolus. V'yiridasei al helam ha'olam k'dei levaris ha'golus einei ela liyoisei anus al pi ha'dibur, like we say in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, that Yaakov Avinu was only because going down to Mitzrayim, only that way. And if Yaakov Avinu would not have had all these events schlepping him down to Mitzrayim, so the Medrash says he would have had to been brought down in iron chains. Yaakov had to go down to Mitzrayim. That was a given. How it would be, the Eibishter made it that it should be in a comfortable way, it should be his children bring him down, with all the respect and all the gishmak and everything. But he would have to go down. Therefore, so what's his attitude? Umemela, take if shemesayim shlichusi b'mak ma'gol she'elov nishlach al pi hashgacha al yoyna, hareyu b'reyach miyad l'makim asher bo yuchel lismas l'gam l'nyon kedusha Torah v'avoda. The Rebbe says an interesting thing that in the footnote says Mordechai actually went up to Eretz Yisrael, went back to Eretz Yisrael, because even though he's a Mishnah Melech, because once the darkness of the Golus was conquered, both the spiritual darkness that he was Ma'ir Klal Yisrael and Emunah, and he challenged them about their participating in the whole Suda of Haman. Once his mission was done, saving the Yidden Baruchnias, saving the Yidden Bagashmias, so that's it. I did my mission. Now let's go back to where I was supposed to be. My real place is back home, back in Eretz Yisrael. Aval le'idach olav ladas, shekol zman shenimtza b'shechusi begolus, osir lo listapik ba'avoida de Menashe, which means hazehirus v'ashmira balvad shebeis avi lo yishakach memenu v'shelo yishpa misivasa. Avoida zu of not forgetting is only a stepping stone to the next part. Hi achana l'tachos ha'mechuvan hifrani alakim beretz ani lahoyres chosh chagolos b'nei mitzvah v'toyra ad la'afichas chosh chagolos la'oir, like it says about Mashiach's times, v'layla kayom yair, that the night itself, the Rebbe says over there in footnote 47, is going to shine because the darkness itself was transformed into light. I remember talking about this idea about Menashe, that someone was on Svabrengi, that there's sometimes a guy goes on Shlichus, and Baruch Hashem, he's Matzliach, and he feels very comfortable, and he feels very happy and satisfied with his situation. He says, if you feel satisfied, if you feel happy where you are, and you don't feel that type of yearning that I need to be by the Rebbe, I need to be in 770, I need to be among Chassidim, you need to take a sabbatical. You need to go take a year off and go back to Crown Heights, find somebody to replace you, whatever. That's not the way how we do our shlichus, to be comfortable and happy. We have to have that thing, that yearning, like Menashe. And then when we have that yearning like Menashe, we start off with Menashe, then we can have the Efraim. Then we can have the idea that I need to transform and I don't take a minute away from it because I have to transform the darkness. And this is also the idea about also remembering the goal. The Rebbe the whole time demands of us about Mashiach. Others say, that's not my problem. Mashiach is not Lubavitch Chassidim. Say, Mashiach is not my problem. I've got to do what I have to do. Hashem told me to learn Torah. Hashem told me to keep mitzvahs. It's Hashem's problem about Mashiach. That means you forgot yourself in Golus. That means that Golus is comfortable for me. I need to have that yearning. I'm not comfortable in Golus. That's like the basic thing. First has to be Menashe. I don't forget where I belong. I belong in Beis Avi. Like the Rebbe always screams about, Banim shegolum al shulchan avim, children that went to exile from their father's table. I cannot feel comfortable if I'm in exile from my father's table. That's Menashe. That's the baseline. And on top of that, we have that baseline. So now let me transform Golus, and let me do it quickly. So Mashiach finally comes. I could be al Shulchan Avim. Should happen already right now.
Amen.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
Fine.